Evening, everyone. I'm Prithvi, a member at Student Alumni Relations Cell at BITS Pilani. I'm delighted to welcome you all to today's Deferred MBA Decoding session, where we have two incredible candidates who have secured sought-after MBA programs, deferred MBA programs. First up, we have Viren Jindal, a Columbia Business School admit who is currently working on his own stealth startup. Up next, we have Balajee RS, a Yale School of Management admit who is currently working as a product manager at Monaro. I thank both of you for being able to adjust this session in your busy schedules.
Hey guys, uh, hi. Thanks Rajul for introducing me and Balaji. We're glad to take the session to give back to the community. I remember talking to a lot of people again from bits from outside of bits as well to get and navigate through the entire process of deferred M. Again, in my year at least, it was just coming up and coming, and people were just getting to know about it. So just happy to help and give back so that everyone has a insightful session about what needs to be done and what doesn't need to be done, what is not required basically in the application process. But yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, likewise, I think Viren covered it pretty well. But yeah, looking forward to it.
Thank you, guys. Um, so to those in our audience wondering what a deferred MBA program is, a deferred enrollment MBA program, sometimes called a 2+2 program, is an early application program many universities offer to high potential college seniors. The program allows applicants to get accepted, work for 2 to 5 years, and then enroll in their business school program.
Really? Well, I disagree. In fact, I will guarantee you that by the end of the night,
Nothing. So without any further ado, let's begin the session. It would be great if we can start with you both sharing your experience and application process.
Sure, I think we have a deck also ready. We can just present that and take it up from there.
Do you want to go for it, Viren?
Yeah, I'm just sharing it.
Awesome. Thanks.
I hope my screen is visible. Got
Yeah.
it. Great, guys. I think we can begin with probably my introduction, then even Balaji's is. But I graduated out of again with Pilani Goa from just recently. I think not even 8 to 9 months back in from the 2023 batch, and I did my master's in mathematics plus a bachelor's in chemical engineering, plus also did some finance courses in the summer of my third year. But from the start, again, I was sure that I'm not probably someone who's interested into core engineering. So dabbled into a lot of stuff outside during internship, even before my PS1. I started off with actually my first internship was in at an insurance tech startup where I was just selling insurance and calling people basically for selling them insurance. And that is probably is you might have also understood that's probably not the best job to start with, but that was my break-in into startups and the business side. And then I went on to do multiple internships at a VC firm, then at a bank called again Morgan Stanley, and then AT Kearney. Did a lot of this stuff and did explore a lot of it, but then came across this program called Deferred MBA at Columbia Business School and did apply to a lot of them as well, but got into Columbia Business School and I'm currently working at an early stage startup. But yeah, currently again working out of my home, so not in Bangalore or any of these other cities. So at home right now, but over to you, Balaji.
Yeah. Thanks. I'm Balajee, also from Goa campus, 2021. I majored in electronics and communications, so EC. And I think my path was a little more non-traditional, definitely compared to Viren. So until my third year, I thought I was going to do a PhD in electrical engineering. And up until like COVID, I still didn't really consider a role in like management. And then COVID happened. I started working at Texas Instruments. I was a chip designer there for 6 months. Um, Went through, this is PS2, right? And then I went through it, realized that's probably not what I want to do in the longer term. And at that time, a first year in BITS Goa, he told me about the 2+2 program at Harvard, which then led me to finding a bunch of other schools, which we'll talk about in a minute. And I applied to a lot of different schools. I got into Yale. I interviewed with a couple more. And after that, I started thinking about a career in management. So definitely very non-traditional in that sense. But I think there were some leading indicators. So I used to lead the alumni cell in with school, and I got a lot of opportunity to like lead initiatives, lead teams, which is what helped me get into the program. And then I said, okay, let me take a year off.
Deferred MBA మీద టాక్ ఉంది అది ఏదో జాయిన్ అయినా
Yeah. Sorry. So yeah. And then I worked at Topper for a year as a boss. Started my MBA at Yale in 2022. And right now I'm taking a gap. So I'm currently working. I actually just like changed from Naro. I started working now at a healthcare B2B SaaS company. But yeah, again, very, very early stage, similar to Viren right now. But yeah, that's my background.
Yeah. Great. I think we can move on to maybe just like understanding what the deferred MBA program is. We have a couple. So again, first question probably would be like, how does it even differ from a regular MBA? So I would say like this is a common question, but generally people also ask that, whether I should do a regular MBA or a deferred MBA program. That question itself is a bit different than, I mean, it's like an incorrect question to even answer because they're basically the same thing. It's just a difference in the application process. With the deferred MBA program, is the only difference is that you'll be applying in your final year, and then if you get an admit, then you have some time to before you go to the school. A bit different from what the structure is at Yale, which again Balaji can explain as well. But it's usually the same thing. You'll be sitting with the same cohort when you choose to attend it. But once you have an admit, you have, at least for the some of the schools, it is usually you have a time period of 2 to 5 years of work experience before you attend that school. And generally, you'll be sitting with the same class or the same courses and everything. The only advantage is that in your final year of undergrad itself, you would have that admit, and it's basically like a safety net. So, and similar to the regular MBA, there is no specific, degree or major requirement that you need to be a management uh, BBA or a BCom honors graduate or an art student or a science student and all that. It's open or like degree agnostic on that matter. So those are like that is probably the best way to put it. How it is different from the deferred MBA program, but I think that's a bit about it. But I think Balaji, if he can also, shed some light on how the Yale Silver Scholar program is a bit different than some of the other deferred MBA programs, that I think should be helpful.
Yeah. So like Viren said, you essentially just apply in your fourth year, and you get in, or fifth year if you're a dualite, and then you get in to the school. You go whenever you decide to go, and that's a conversation. So you actually get a lot of support from these schools during your deferment period. I don't know, Viren, if you're getting enough, but I got a little bit from Yale, and
Nice.
yeah, but the Yale program alone is a little different from the others, in the sense that what they ask you to do is join immediately, finish 1 year of the MBA, and then work for a while before going back to school. So in that sense, the structure is different. So you end up starting the MBA sooner, and it's especially good if you were someone like me who came from a non-traditional background. You think getting a business education first and then doing some business jobs makes more sense. But that's not to say that you can't structure the Yale program the same way Viren is structuring his Columbia program. They are very flexible in that sense, but they're also saying, hey, you don't need to wait 2 years to come here. You can come earlier as well, right? And I think in my year, actually all of the schools listed below. So Stanford, Harvard, UPenn, Wharton, Columbia, Yale, Kellogg, Booth, Sloan, Berkeley, and Darden. All these schools started offering the deferred MBA program in my year. Before there was like Harvard, Yale, and I think Wharton too, and like Columbia, right? So more and more schools are introducing this kind of a program, and the whole idea for them is to get good talent early on. So definitely yeah, like start thinking about it if you know some point in the future you want to go ahead and do an MBA. Yeah.
Yeah, as Balaji mentioned that, most of the schools that you might have known of or even heard of, they are probably offering this deferred MBA program. And these are actually the ones that are also currently offering the deferred MBA program. More so
Oh,
are there other schools as well, NYU and all of those as well, but those are not open for international students. So again,
right.
open for just people who are doing their bachelor's there. So these are basically all the schools that are offering deferred MBA as an option even now. But we can go ahead and also understand, how things are when you're applying to all of these schools. I think we missed this slide. Okay, yeah. So if you like taking my experience to applying to the CBS deferred MBA program, I think the main part where you would want to understand, okay, what are the things that are required and all of that stuff is the application process, where the only source of truth is the website that Columbia has on it. I think you would again get multiple resources online or third party resources on YouTube and all of that. And there are chances it might be outdated or something like that. The best way to understand what is that they require for your particular year, which would, if you're in your second year, you would have to wait for some time, but you can still go to the website and understand what are the things that they require. For me, at least, it was a resume that they wanted, two essays. One, generally, again, this is also common for most of the deferred MBA programs, that one essay would be probably related to why do you want to apply for an MBA and why the school is right for you, and why basically you need to basically show to them that Columbia Business School or that particular school is the right fit for you. One essay would be related to that. The second would be again dependent on what your short term, long term goals are, what your story is. And at least for me, or CBS in general, I think for the past years, they have a different kind of an essay where it's usually more on the, like a question related to your values and strengths and all of that. One question which is very like CBS is known for it is they would have a question like, what is your favorite book, your favorite author? In my time, the question was, who was your favorite, like a leader that you look up to? So that role model question is again something that CBS is known for, being notorious for having those kind of questions. It might have changed this year as well, but as I said, the best way to know what is required is go onto the website and understand what are the things that they want. Thirdly, you would require a GRE or a GMAT score. Again, there would be multiple questions whether you know the GMAT is a preferred exam to give. I think both of us, at least Balaji and I, both of us had given their GRE and both of us got into again the deferred MBA program. So like busting that myth, I think you can give any of those. I would just recommend give both mocks for both of the exams and understand which one is better for you. Everyone has again different inclination towards both of the exam, and they have different structures. Thirdly, for CBS again, fourthly, like again, CBS has just one recommendation letter that you need to give. It could come in. It's usually preferred that you give it through your past employer. In this case, would be your internship supervisor or a PS2 manager or something like that. But again, the person who's giving this recommendation, there are multiple questions regarding, what should be the seniority level. Can it come from a professor? Again, all of those questions as well. I think the best way to understand that is again asking that exact question to like the mail that they would have for uh, clarifying your queries. I was under the impression that a professor would be more helpful for if there are two recommendation or even one recommendation letter. But the school themselves replied to me that it's preferred that it comes from a previous employer or a manager or ex-manager, something like that. So the best way I would say for any school that you want to understand, okay, who would be the best recommender for your profile, just ask them the same question on the mail that they've given you. And lastly, after you have the first round of application, which is similar to your resume shortlisting and application shortlisting, you would have one round of interview. At least for CBS, that was the case. And then within a month or so, they would roll out the decisions whether you are in or not. But things, as we already mentioned before, that this is usually for people who have either some inclination towards the business side or know that they want to do an MBA later on in their career. And again, as this is a safety net and it's not a hard and fast thing that if you got in an admit, you would have to go there. You can just have it at the back of your pocket, even if you have some inclination towards, have that maybe you want to do an MBA later on. So that is one thing. And secondly, as most of the programs and even Yale, that you can go to that MBA program later on, it's just a valuable safety net that you can have. And you can still pursue the path that you want to do. Most of the people who would be applying for a regular MBA, they would have in the back of their mind whether this profile is the best suited for if I want to do an MBA later on, right? You would want to see consulting shortlist and have 2 years of consulting experience, or all of those things. But now that I say, for my experience, now that I have a CBS admit, I could easily join an early stage startup without thinking twice about it whether this would fit in for my profile or not. So those are some of the advantages, but we could also move towards the Yale process. I think there's a page missing. Just give
Let
me
me check. Just a second. Maybe try refreshing.
Yeah,
Because I
it's
think we were
showing on the.
collaborating and you were presenting the previous version, I think.
I'll just check it.
Yeah, sure. But in the meanwhile, who was your role model for your essay? Who did you talk
Yeah,
about?
sure. So to answer that as well, I think it was again advice to me that your role model shouldn't be someone who's again a commonplace person. Like if you say like Lionel Messi, Ronaldo, and all of those things. Or even for India, they would hear a lot about Sachin Tendulkar and all of those things. That those are again commonplace, and it's usually not recommended to do all of that because they would want unique, and everyone would mention the same things. But I still went ahead with actually after pondering about four or five of them, I came up with this investor called Vinod Khosla, and I was like, as my profile is more related to early stage startups and VC, I would want to go ahead with them. But then understanding that how important the essay was and the values that I would have to highlight, I did not know him beforehand and I had no research that I'd done about him. But I was very passionate about playing football and I did know about a lot about Lionel Messi's story, and though he was my role model. And but the only thing to keep in mind here is that even if you're mentioning a very common role model, you need to mention things that are not common about him. So, for example, I did not mention that he's, one of the biggest, football or one of the best footballers that is there out there. Things that I think which are uncommon about Lionel Messi was that he was a rival. Of course, you cannot deny that from his personality. But Lionel Messi, you wouldn't think of him and see that okay, he's a robust leader, he would speak a lot. And those were some parallels that I had drew from my profile and his profile, that these are XYZ reasons why he's a role for me. And so mentioning, I think, things which are again unique in your entire application process is very important than just having a unique role model. I'll just check with my deck. I think I'm just checking if I can add that page.
Hey, it's fine. You know what? Let me share screen.
Yeah,
Because I have it on.
God, yeah.
Okay, cool. Um, okay, so yeah, let's move on from the goat and talk a little bit about like the Silver Scholar program. Um, so yeah, like just echoing what Viren said about the source of truth, definitely rely on like the website. Speak to some students to get a sense about the school, but um, we are not on the admission committee, so like ultimately we're not decision makers, and it is really not very clear also like what works, what doesn't. So maybe just touching a bit on my application process for Yale. I obviously had to give a resume in and write a couple of essays very similar to Viren. One was about why Yale, why MBA, just like broadly why I was applying to that program. And then the second thing was um, in my case, I think they were asking more about some personal commitment that you had, some goal that's important to you, right along those lines. So yeah, it was a chance for you to show um, how you're involved in your society, which is something that Yale values, and at the same time, like show how you're like say action oriented or like you have some leadership potential, which to them indicates that you might be a successful MBA candidate, right? Same like Viren, I did GRE because one, I was thinking of doing a PhD, so I didn't even think about the GMAT. So I already had a GRE score when I had to apply, which made things easier. But that's not to say like one. I think most people do the GMAT, but again, like at this stage, you have the flexibility to either do the GRE or GMAT. So yeah, do whichever one you feel more comfortable. Apart from it, I had to give in 2 recommendation letters. So Yale asked for one academic and one employer-based recommendation letter. I actually gave 2 academic recommendation letters. I didn't bother checking with them. But it worked out because one, I wasn't ready to take a recommendation letter from my TI advisor because I didn't show leadership there. I showed him that I can totally design an electronics chip, which is useless to Yale. So what I did was I got a letter from the Associate Dean of Alumni Relations, which gave the chance to talk about like my leadership potential and the way I lead teams and initiatives and so on. And the other letter focused more on like um, just like raw academic talent, which I got from my advisor in the electronics department. So I think like just understand what they're trying to get at, and for you, if it makes more sense to get it from a more academic person, but they can speak to your leadership potential better, then do that. I also had to do a video submission. Like questions would come on the spot, and then you answer, and that's EL's way of testing if you are truly who you claim to be. There's also a Symetrics test. I think they still do it, which doesn't play too much into your interview outcomes, but they use it overall to assess and um, put you into like learning teams once you start the MBA itself. I'm sure CBS has a version of it. Probably they do it once you come there. So
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
yeah. Which Yale just does preemptively. And of course, the interview happened. It was one of the nicer interviews for me personally, where they focus more on, um, my career goals, what I want to do in the future, how Yale can help me get there, and they also asked for a quote before the interview, which was significant to me. So I gave one. And we talked about that for a while, and so on, right? So yeah, that was my application process. And I think you should definitely apply to the Yale Silver Scholar program. It's a very good program, very comparable to CBS. We actually like collaborate on a lot of different things. So if I'm still in school by the time you come here, we'll probably cross
Yeah.
paths. But yeah, it's great if you wanna get business knowledge right away. The Silver Scholar program gives you that flexibility, but at the same time, if you want to make it as a 2+2 structure, you can do it as well. People at Yale are super supportive of what makes sense for your career, and they're here to help you do that, right? But yeah, it's like you come early, you play the risk of accelerating your career at the cost of a lot of mental and like emotional effort, right? Yeah,
I think it will be
that's
helpful to also explain what all your stats were on the application. I think resume
my
and all of
stats.
those, again, in terms of GPA or GRE and GMAT, and then I can also explain to just give them a varied point of how your application was versus mine and
That's
how
true.
things can still work out. Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. So yes, again, I'm non-traditional. I think what stood out for me was my GPA was a 9.6 at no 9.7 at the time I applied, which was like, of course, very high. But yeah, it's just like one number on the point. I had a GRE score of um some 330 something. I don't like early 330s, and my experiences were just like TI. I did chip design, and then I spoke more about like the initiatives that I led for Alumni Relations Cell. I was working on a mentorship program, and I had the chance to also organize the global meet. And I'd been working with ARC for 3 years at that point. So just spoke about all of
Hmm.
that.
Great.
And
I think you
what
just go
other
on.
metrics
Anything
are there?
else? I
That's
think
it, right?
recommendation letter you did. Yeah,
I already mentioned my
got it.
LORs. Do you want to do yours?
Got it. Yeah, I think in my case again, it was as a bit different from what Balaji's profile was. I did not have a 9.6. I was generally the lower ends of the GPA part. I think when I applied, I had an 8.1 at my GPA, and then GRE again, I had a 330 on my. I think the trick there again, not the trick, but some things to consider here are if you are on the lower end of GPA, and generally, I think most of these deferred MBA programs, it's usually helpful to have an 8.5 plus minimum. I would say, again, if you're applying for Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, and all of those, I think you would have to have at least a similar GPA to what Balaji had. But I think it's generally, again, very helpful to have a higher GPA. But if you are on the lower end, it's usually helpful to compensate it with a higher GRE or a GMAT score and go to every school's website and you will understand what the averages are. And also understand that as you're applying from an Indian pool, you are in one of the most competitive pools and you would have to just add some percentage to the average score to understand what is India's average. And basically, you would have to have a 99 percentile, maybe something around that to match it with your lower GPA if you have something like that. But I think that is one thing that you might consider into when you're evaluating your academic profile. Apart from that, again, I did go for a professional LOR, not just because the school asked me to, but also because that those were my preferred LORs because I had done around 3 to 4 inches. I did not have any single professor to go to who could talk about my strengths or anything because I did not actually know any of the professors personally. So again, whole point here was just give you a flavor about how different profiles can still get into the deferred MBA programs. It could be different schools, it could be a different, you could be waitlisted or some stuff like that, but different profiles do get in to the deferred MBA program. So just wanted to do that as well.
Yeah, just two things. One is I don't think I know a lot of people who go to HBS and Stanford. I don't think they're like a 9.7, but a 9-pointer definitely helps.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and the other thing is echoing what you said about like different schools have different focuses. Like
Yeah.
MIT as a tech school, they care a lot more about
Hmm.
if you're tech, like your standards are like have to be way higher. Versus like a Harvard or a Yale or even like Columbia
Yeah.
for that matter, where they don't bring in a lot of tech talent, so it's like you're
Yeah.
already on the nicer side. But
Hmm.
curious, did you apply to Yale? Did you interview with them?
No, I did not apply to Whale. I did have uh like I had a thought that Yale would again be very focused towards academics, so I did
Okay.
understand okay what all schools do prefer, what all things, so did apply
Okay.
according to that.
Okay. Got it. I didn't apply to CBS either, but that was because they had a rolling application. Yale was the first one.
Okay,
So I already
got it.
got into Yale and I was
I
like,
think yeah, again it'll be helpful to again go through what all schools did you apply to and then what all did you get into again interview and then the
yeah.
ones that you finally got.
Um, yeah. I applied to Harvard, Yale, Kellogg, Booth, Sloan, and Haas.
Nice,
What about you?
got it. So I had applied to again very conservative on that front, but Kellogg, Booth, CBS, and Wharton. I did get interview invites from both Booth and Columbia, and I converted Columbia. But yeah, that was
Right.
my
Right.
start basically from
I
there.
interviewed with Booth, Kellogg, and Yale. And like
Yes.
ultimately converted Yale. But yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
Okay. Thank you.
Um, I guess like just another slide, I guess, from personal experience that I wanted to share here. More so around people who are thinking of starting a deferred MBA or even just your MBA abroad. Um, if you have up to 2 years of experience, because right now I have 2 years of experience. So like I've seen it at 1 year of experience, I've seen it at 2 years of experience. Next year I'll see it at 3. So we'll know for sure. But if you have 2 or lesser, there are a few things to keep in mind. And so one is what you're what you're essentially doing is you're gambling to say, okay, I can fast track my career by 3 years, right? If you're at this point. Uh, so that's if it works out, that's good. And exponential growth of wealth. So the sooner you start earning, the bigger bucks, more and more and more it gives you over time. Um, you get to learn a lot of different skills when you're still able to learn, which I've noticed with my MBA classmates, they usually struggle um, to do courses and like learn something new or technical. But you're still in that point of life where you can pick things up faster. That's true for like hard skills, I guess. Soft skills usually come with time. And you get a lot of exposure at a young age. And the other thing that grows exponentially is your network. So money and network can't understate the value of both. And you essentially start building that sooner, right? Um, and on the other hand, like it's hard being in this program. A couple of you on the call who know me already know like all the crap that I'm going through. Just because like I'm young, right? So your classmates are older. So your EQ needs to be higher, which is fine. Which if you like have enough introspection and you've interacted a lot outside, you'll be fine on. But recruiting is hard no matter what. Most MBA level roles need 3+ years of work experience, and if you're anything below that, a high chance that you get rejected on the spot. Like the system just automatically rejects you. Amazon does that, and Amazon is one of the biggest recruiters in any economy, right? So you lose access to an employer that sponsors visas like right at the application stage, which is hard. And the schedules are very hectic. You need to do so much more when you're living by yourself in the US, which we don't realize in India typically, especially not when you're still in undergrad, where you just go to the mess to eat. Sometimes you don't even eat, your body is fine, and all that stuff, right? Uh, it's hard. You need to actually devote like at least a day of your week to just maintaining your life. And on top of that, you need to deal with all the cultural changes of living in the US, and the financial differences. If especially like if you're um, even if you're like upper middle class, you're still not you don't have a level playing field here. You have not been earning in dollars, and it's hard. Like you mentally do the conversion, and it starts looking pretty bad for you. So it takes time to like adjust to these things. And when you're earlier in your career, you don't have savings as well, so it makes things like definitely harder, right? So that's like you need to adapt at any point you come here, but when you have lower savings, it makes things harder. And another thing is like you just leave bits. All you've seen so far is like placement unit and how they function, where you're just chilling until the fourth year. You drop a couple of resumes, PU takes care of things for you, which is not the case in the US. Like here, if you're coming, uh, you will land in the US in August, uh, but your applications have opened in June. So even before you come to the US, I remember I applied to BCG for their summer program, and I got rejected in July. I didn't even have my visa at that point. Right. So just to say, like, you need to start much earlier, and the way to recruit in the US is through networking. There's no like campus placements system, and that's a big change to adapt to when you're earlier in your life. When even in India, when you move jobs, you end up doing some networking. You're used to applying on a company's website and so on, which is not the case in like PU, right? Um, PU is like great. Uh, it's good for India, makes life easier, but when you move to the US, that's another difficulty that you need to deal with. So earlier, it's usually harder, right? So yeah, just to give you some contrast on like what works and what doesn't, and what's good versus what makes it more challenging. Um, yeah. But again, like, you need to do that math for yourself, see if your finances make sense, see if you think you can grow wealth and your network enough that it offsets whatever monetary costs you take on in the beginning, whatever stress you take on in the beginning. And if you think it pays off, then go ahead and do it. But it's a question that you need to answer yourself, and not something that someone else can come in and answer for you.
Yeah. I think I wouldn't have any, opinions here because I haven't again started, or I'm planning to at least go after 3 to 4 years. But I've heard him again. Echo the feelings that Balaji mentioned. And people again, Indians are known for going, or they want to go to do their graduate education even faster and then come back because again they want to get married and multiple other reasons that you want to back or just stay there
Oh
and
yeah,
start
that.
your professional life again, because it's usually like average again Indians would want to get married earlier. It's just generally the trend. So a lot of people do think of going just earlier, but then again there are multiple consequences of that which you would have to face. But I think those are some of the things that again we also wanted to share. But I think we've spoken a lot, and we would be open to, I think, questions now that you guys might have.
Yeah, and before we jump into questions, I just want to also say on behalf of both of us,
Yeah.
these are like opinions, our experiences. We don't review applications, we don't make decisions. We only know about the schools that we applied to. So just keep that in mind when you put in your questions, and some of those we may not be able to answer.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for your presentation. It was really insightful. So we have some questions that the audience wants to ask both of you. So can you please tell us about the finances, about how your program is structured, and then like if there's any other scholarships or waivers that you guys are availing or like are aware of?
I think Balaji can go first because again I haven't started. Yeah.
Yeah, an MBA costs you like 200K over 2 years. Also, hey, just a second, Rajul, is the chat on? Because I'm not able to see anything here. It just says disabled for me.
Just a second. I'll enable it. Yeah. Cool.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so like, I mean, I think easiest way is to take questions through chat. Or if someone wants to unmute and talk, but yeah. Yeah, sorry. Coming back to the thing, it usually costs like 200K USD over 2 years, right? And scholarships are school based. Some schools give need based scholarships. Some schools just give it based on merit. But business is business. There's nothing called merit. It's all like a game of metrics. So it's that. And there are some external scholarships, not many if you're an Indian citizen. There's a few like there's a Tata Foundation scholarship, and then there's one by Mahindra which I got. And then there's a few more if you're like local to Mumbai. A lot of these trusts give out scholarships. Yeah, but that's about it. Just put it in the chat as well. Yeah, so like personally, I don't have a lot of scholarship.
I think
Still
Balaji.
making investment. But then I think the way you compare it, and or did my internet lag? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a bit.
Okay. Yeah. I named my Wi-Fi BPYC, like BITS Pilani Yale campus, because I live with other Bitsians here. and it always lags. It just reminds me of campus all the time. So, yeah. Sorry, I was just saying, the way you want to think about your finances is like how much you get until a point, in like how much you pay, and then how much do you earn over the next 3 to 5 years, because your US visa typically lasts 3 years, and if you have a sense of how much burn you have, then you have a sense of like how much you earn, and you do that ROI calculation essentially, which is important if you're coming to B school, so you better learn it. So yeah, that's how I think about
Yeah,
it
I
at
think
the end.
just to add to that, I think the only thing to understand right now is that if you would only be applying for those scholarships when you're going or you are in your matriculation year. So currently, as Balaji went to Yale during like just last year or whenever he went. So I think that was the time that he applied to. I did not have an option to apply to any of the scholarships. I would be eligible for applying to scholarships when I go to the school or my first year of attendance. I think just to add to that, I think there's a question by Arya. Did you apply to all
CBS
yourselves or
offer
did he?
scholarships, or
I think yeah, CBS again does offers scholarships, but again I don't have any experience of that because I haven't even looked into it. But I'm
tough?
just waiting until I
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
So another common question among the candidates right now and the people in the audience is that when is the ideal time to start preparing for GMAT? And like, do you guys have any advice on that? Like, I know you both had some unconventional routes. So when exactly did you
Hmm.
take GMAT and when do you think is the best appropriate time?
Good. I think I can take this first. Again, here also I had a different route which related to GMAT and GRE as well. I did start preparing for my GMAT. And usually I think it's better to give it in your third or fourth year. One reason for that is again deferred MBA is it's not you can't guarantee what you'll get and whether you'll get in or not. And generally a GMAT or a GRE is right now valid for 5 years. So just to be eligible again for using the same score if in case you don't get into the deferred MBA program, I think giving it in the final or your pre-final year, it's helpful because you still would have some runway and you could use the same score again. That being said, again, it is completely dependent on how much time you have in per semester, and usually the end semesters are usually freer, and you have the breaks and everything. Your internships are sorted. That is probably, I think, you could account for that and then decide when do you want to give it. I had like personally for my thing, I had started again in my fourth year. And again, I was a dual degree student, so that was basically a pre-final year. I had started preparing for my GMAT, but I couldn't, like, the verbal wasn't working out for me at all. So I prepared for the GMAT for 1 month, and then my score wasn't moving. It was in generally in the 630 to 640 ranges. Then I did chat with multiple people whether GRE is easier or how should I even focus or shift my focus to GRE after giving 1 month into GMAT. And there were multiple people done that. So I gave my first mock for GRE and it came around something around a 320. And I felt that this is a good enough score to at least start with. And then I gave in again around 2 months and I was able to get a 330 on the GRE. So generally, I think it again keep 3 to 6 months maybe at max. And some people are able to do it within 1 month, 2 months, and I think Balaji had a much shorter timeline, I think, to that. But generally, I think third year to fourth year, and then maybe 6 months at max is what you require.
Yeah, nothing to add. Yeah,
Okay.
stick to your
So,
timelines.
so you guys mentioned you applied to many business schools, and like you mentioned how Yale is more academically focused as compared to
That
CBS.
might just be again an opinion. Like
Hmm.
again, it's not just said that it'll be academically
So,
focused, but yeah.
yeah, but like, have you guys found any such like expectations or basically the way the curriculum is structured, maybe in some other business schools that you applied to? Was there any difference that maybe it aligned with what you wanted?
Wait,
Maybe I
what's the
can go
question?
first again.
Like, I think there's a question by Aryan Basantani on the chat. You
Okay.
can see.
I think again the question would be differing from firstly what like is required for your profile during your admissions process. Second is what the school is focusing on. So I think to answer the first question, it it's again very subjective, and it's again a black box, so you can't tell anything. Something that I would want to say for Columbia, I know, is that for essays, they do want to hear from you that New York is the place to be, and it's something that Columbia offers a lot. So I think for the admissions process for Columbia, you need to make sure that your essays have focus on you being able to utilize New York and how New York will be able to help you with your short-term and long-term goals. And again, Balaji can maybe speak about Yale, but answering the second question about peculiarities about the school, Columbia is known for again being a finance school, again being in New York and New York City and all of that. So I think those are things that you would come to know about when you start your research about all of these schools. Some would say that again Harvard, Stanford are more the entrepreneurship PC, but some would say it's maybe even related to product management. So you could think about all of these and get to know about all of that by researching about the school and also their employment report. That is probably the best way to understand what the school is known for and all of that. But I think those were my, I think, comments on the questions or two-part question that Aryan had asked. But I think Balaji, if he wants to add specifically for Yale or more, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I just found it funny that someone said you should look at Columbia if you're interested in business, and Yale
Yeah.
takes acads more into and you're going to business school. Like you better be interested
Yeah.
in business wherever you're going. But also
I think he meant finance maybe, but yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, I just found the way it read quite
Yeah.
funny. But what you said, Viren, is like interesting, right? Because that's the view you get from when you're creating your application. But I should say, like, every school, but then you hit it right on the head, right? You said look at the employment reports, which is actually what tells you the ground reality, and um, most schools are same. There is some difference at Harvard and Stanford, I've noticed, because they typically have older people come in, and there are more dropouts in both schools. So those people, what they end up doing is starting companies. I'm working with one of them, like from HBS right now, who essentially left like to start up, right? So just to say, like, the different schools have different focuses. Some do better in like hedge funds, which require more senior folks, but for internationals who are mainly focused on consulting or tech product management, most schools offer similar outcomes. But yeah, employment reports. And the other thing is Poets and Quan. I don't know if you came across them, but they have very detailed reports on all the schools, which they do by working with these schools and students at these schools. So it's not some random website. It is actually very legitimate. And I would definitely use that as a good resource. And the other thing is, like, once you get into the school itself, I don't know about CBS, but at Yale, our motto is business and society. So there's a lot of focus on social good, not in terms of nonprofits. People get that wrong. But it's called a B Corp today in the US. So if you're a company that is for profit, but then you also help the community and do social good, you're classified as a B Corp company. And there's a little bit more focus at Yale at that, but most schools are today, because it's like official, there's something called a B Corp. Legitimately, there's more and more focus on that at these business schools, right? So yeah, Kellogg is the marketing school, CBS is the finance school,
Yeah.
so is Booth. But it's not very that's more of a marketing thing for them than ground reality. Yeah.
Thing. I can see one question related to, did people go through B school consultants? If yes, when did you approach them and how were they helpful? My experience, I did reach out to this MBA consultant called Sumit Welekar, and I had reached out to him, I think around 9 months before my application process. So that was my story, and he was
The
generally
Haas
helpful
guy.
and usually, yeah. And
Yeah.
generally, I think MBA consultants are helpful in terms of framing your essays and all of that. You need to realize that the essays you would have to write them yourself. It's generally an MBA consultant would help you basically making your story, helping out with what needs to be mentioned, opening your eyes about how your previous past experiences could be there in your essays, not just internships and all of that, but with your background, all of that stuff as well. But the basic use of an MBA consultant is making your story and helping out with your essays. But eventually, you'll have to do all of that by your own. It's just an assistance. That was my take. But yeah, Balaji, he had.
I've spoken to that guy, so I know who you're talking about. But I didn't actually avail anyone's services per se. For me, it was just like about being motivated and figuring it out for myself. Because when I spoke to these people, they were like, "Oh, you're from electronics. Like, what are you doing here?" Which doesn't make sense. And like, um, until me, at least I don't know of many seniors who got into Yale or like did deferred programs. In general, there was one guy who went into HBS, um, who's like graduating this year, the 2+2 program. But that was about it. So, like sometimes when you speak to them, like man, they don't really know too much either. So it's easy to get discouraged. Especially I see another question where someone asked, I don't really have leadership experience. I'm just gonna like tie this to that and say, if you're someone like that going to a consultant, they don't really know how to help you. They know how to take someone who's just not focused and push them into where they need to go. If you're sure that you want to do an MBA, you don't have the right background, then you need to find someone who came from a background similar to you to help you get in. And if you're looking at some consultants who don't have an MBA themselves, Sumit does, so he's actually good in that sense. But if you're speaking to them, like they've not done it, they've not gone through the journey. Like, how do you expect them to guide you apart from like pattern matching and whatever things, right? So just think critically about it. And
I think to
transitioning more
answer
into
his,
that question.
yeah,
Sorry,
you
go
could
ahead.
go on. I think you were transition to the question, I think.
Yeah,
But
the leadership
yeah.
part is like leadership is not that you led a team or you managed people. I think you need to really understand what leadership is, and I'm not saying that's like one answer to it. I'm saying like figure out what it means to you, and focus on that. Um, Speak to experiences where you've taken initiative or you've um, actively put an effort without someone telling you what to do. It could be in like so many different forms. And speak about that and show that you have what it takes to convince people, create a vision, move things around, keep people together in a team, and so on, right? Like leadership doesn't mean you manage someone.
I think to also answer your question about should I look for internships in the business domain, I think one very important learning that I also mention to a lot of people is that don't make your profile just because you want to have it for your deferred MBA thing and that will help you get inside. Maybe there could be some things, but especially choosing your internship, I think you should probably do it what in the field that you want to do it in. And then I think that would be something that is again true to your profile and it'll generally be helpful not just for your MBA and but even later on. I think choose experiences that you yourself want to do, which you can shine the best in, and then maybe think about whether this profile fits in for the MBA or not. I think starting from your second year, I think you shouldn't put it in a bucket and make your profile just directly to your how it would fit in for an MBA, but do chase experiences that you feel would add value to, and that experience would add value to your profile that you want to do maybe in your career as well, because just in case you don't get that deferred MBA, and if you're still chasing business internships and you're not interested in those, that might not work out. So I think that is one just comment that I wanted to put in. The questions.
There's one on fit, and then I need to drop off in like a few minutes. But I think that's like a good question. Having come to like before coming to Yale, I thought they were just doing BS. Like, what does fit really mean? Um, so I'll take it as a two-part question to say like, is it important and what is it in the first place? So fit is like 100% important. I think that's probably the biggest factor in your application is if you can demonstrate fit, then you're good. And this is not just for undergrads, this is for like hunting for jobs, trying to find a new role for yourself. Like in a lot of different aspects, fit is very important. Especially like early stage, I'm sure Viren feels the same thing. You don't want to get someone on the team who doesn't work well with you. So fit's very important. And coming to what fit actually might mean, I think the best way to think about it for me is, do you like the people there and do the people there like you, right? then you have fit. And what this translates into is like speaking to a lot of different people at that school to understand whether it meets what you need and so on. And like in conversely, right, like you should like the school. So if you're someone like very obsessed with rankings, you might notice like CBS is a M7, Yale is not an M7, and some people can never come to terms with that fact, and they just like dismiss it. Which if it is something that you are concerned about, um, then you're never gonna be like very happy, and you actually don't have fit, and that comes across in the interview as well. When you interview these places, right? So that's just to say, like, focus on fit and don't put in an application if you think you won't go there end of the day.
Yeah. I think there's one question related to
I think there's one question
is
related, final question that we'll take up
okay.
regarding how each component of your application weighs in. Like Yash is asking how important letter of recommendations is in your application, and if there's any other component that maybe weighs in more.
I think a difficult question because there probably isn't a singular weightage that they would have put into each of the application components. Maybe just generally thinking about maybe the resume, GPA, and all of that. Again, they evaluate it very holistically, but some things that are again a no-go maybe would be, say, having a GPA lower than 6 might be a bit difficult position for you. Internships, again, there are questions about having a big brand or not having a big brand. I think more than like a brand would be helpful, but again, your experience and how you have contributed there, and maybe if you're working at an early stage startup, if you've led some processes, things, and all of that, I think it's again a very not zero or one a binary thing that this is X and this will not be fitting in with the profile. I think it's very holistic, but I think again, letter of recommendations is an important part of the application process. I think one of the major things is how they would also evaluate your fit from. So I think there's no I can't not put in a percentage that this is say 20% importance in the whole application thing. But again, it's generally helpful to think about all of the components as being equal and then giving your best shot. But yeah, I think that is how I would want to answer that question.
Yeah, I just echo that. Same thing.
Okay.
Okay.
I think this is it. Thank you guys. Your insight has been invaluable. I thank you both for sharing it with us here today. And yeah, I thank our audience for
Yeah, I
their.
think if anyone else has any questions, if they want to have one-on-one chats or anything, all of that, I think they can just reach out to both of us on LinkedIn, and we can just we're happy to answer any of the questions that you might have. So
Yeah, but like put the question in the request that you usually send, because
yeah,
sometimes requests come in, you
without
may
any
you just be busy, you don't get back to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I think
I published a paper before going into my MBA. I don't think they cared about it. Suck it. So yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but yeah, thanks for putting the session together. Definitely nice to like
yeah, thanks
come
Rajul,
back and
thanks
interact.
Kitsa and entire team. Yeah, happy to be back to university program. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you guys. Thank you for the audience for their fantastic questions and engaging with us today. We'll drop off now. Thank you.
All right, thanks guys. Bye.
Yeah.